So my name's Alan. Sneaker bots are basically software that automates the entire process of buying the shoe. So when you start a sneaker bot, right, typically you'll enter your billing and shipping information, and this information will get stored in the bot. And usually when you're running a bot, you'll set up what you call tasks. And what these tasks are, these are basically, you can think of it as one task is one person on a website. So instead of having 5 people trying to buy a shoe for you, you might be using a sneaker bot running 5 tasks. Now, each task will basically be attached to the billing and shipping information that you entered previously. And what will happen is when you start that task, it will try to find the shoe that you're trying to buy. It'll add the shoe to your cart, and basically it'll submit your shipping and payment information automatically. So basically this whole process is automated, done by the software itself. So typically it's a lot faster than a person trying to buy the shoe off the website themselves. So where humans might take a few seconds to realize what's going on, have to keep refreshing the page if something breaks, Sneakerbot will automatically just keep doing that for you. So it'll have much more time efficiency. It'll have much better time efficiency compared to a human. And it'll do this process relatively quick as well. Some sneaker bots can check out in under 3 seconds, and I've seen checkout times as short as 2 seconds. Originally, I actually got into sneaker botting by writing bots myself. So there's 2 types of categories of bots. There's private bots and there's commercial bots. Typically with a private bot, that is either a sneaker bot that you have written yourself or either outsource somebody to write for you. Now, typically sneaker bots that are private often have, methods that commercial bots don't employ, which means typically if you have a very well-written private bot, you'll have much more success than a commercially available bot. In terms of how much I paid for it, as I mentioned before, I wrote it myself, so it is free. But there are different bots for different things. So there might be a sneaker bot for Adidas, and there might be a sneaker bot for Nike. Typically, because each site is different, you can't really buy an all-in-one solution. You'll have to buy different bots for different websites. Some bots I've seen sell for as high as 4,000 Australian dollars. Depending on the type of bot that it is. So that's typically your more high-end bot that can cover more sites. So it's kind of like an all-in-one package. But as I mentioned previously, it won't have all existing sites. It'll just have a large portion of the important ones that tend to get a lot of stock. Market price, as I mentioned before, it depends on the kind of bot that you're using. So if you have a bot, for example, that might work solely on Foot Locker and no other website, you might be seeing to pay around 200 Australian dollars for a bot like that. Where, as I mentioned before, you have an all-in-one bot, which you might be paying 4,000 Australian dollars for. So the market price of bots is varying depending on what your use case is. So with the low end, I'd say probably around $200 and the high end about $4,000. But typically for your everyday kind of bot, you're looking to pay around $1,000 or so, depending on what you plan to use it for. As for sharing your bot with someone else, if it's a commercially available bot, sure, I wouldn't mind sharing it to help a friend. Maybe they can't run their sneaker bot because they might be doing something when a sneaker releases. But in terms of private bots, typically I would keep those to myself. This is because sometimes when you're sharing private bots, you have to send them the raw source code of the bot. So the actual code that makes the bot work. Now, typically you might have some secret methods employed into that code. So you might not be able to share it with somebody just in case it gets leaked out. In the 2 years that I've been botting sneakers, I have seen people get hundreds of pairs, even the top 1% getting thousands. But this all comes down to the time you spent setting up, the amount of capital you have. It depends on a lot of varying factors. It might depend on the type of bot that you're running, right? You might be very successful on a small online retailer, but your bot might fail on a big online retailer like Adidas. And typically Adidas will get thousands of pairs, where an online retailer will be lucky to get, more than 100, 200 even. So in terms of how many pairs you can get, it really depends on what sites you target. As I mentioned previously, if you aim for the big retailers and you have a good setup, typically you'll get a lot more than somebody who's just aiming for small online retailers. With the risk of botting, as I mentioned before, you're using commercially available bots. Now, you don't know what the developers of that bot have written into the code. I've heard cases of people using sneaker bots and having their credit card information stolen. So that's definitely one thing you have to be careful for. Depends on what people are trying to do and the type of shoe they've acquired. Typically, if it's a very in-demand shoe, if it's a very in-demand shoe that they can see going up in the long run, they might not even dispose of it. They might sit on the shoe and wait for the prices to go up. If it's a very in-demand shoe that they know is not going to do well in the long run, typically they might sell on a platform such as StockX, GOAT, Pushes. They might sell it in consignment stores even, which is basically a real brick and mortar store that you can go into, consign your shoes, and if your shoe sells, not only will you get the money, but the people who own the store also get a share of the profit too. So that method is called consignment. Typically, a lot of people tend to use bulk buyers as well. A lot of big bulk buyers tend to do what we call is retail arbitrage, which is basically getting paid to move inventory from one place to another. So for example, a lot of buyers might buy in Australia where the market price for a shoe is typically lower, and then sell it in other places such as China, where the market price is typically higher. So in doing this, they can earn, profitable amounts of money just from moving a shoe from one place to the other.